showtime!
Recently, GameSpot did an interview with some Genshin Impact developers, and this isn't something that we see happen very often, and they asked a very interesting question and gave a not so interesting / good response. So I want to talk about that, and I will go over what else they said as well. So let's start with the most disappointing one. The question is, currently the Spiral Abyss is the only true endgame content for players at high adventure ranks. Are there any plans to release new permanent endgame content in the same vein as the Spiral Abyss? To which we get the answer of, the Spiral Abyss is one of the most effective ways for players to test out their party composition and combat strength. If we designed another type of permanent endgame that is similar to the Spiral Abyss, it might end up creating excessive anxiety for our players. Not everyone is interested in the Musk Reef. Just like the Genius Invocation TCG that we unveiled in the special program for version 3.2, we are also working on designing more interesting gameplay in the future. As an open world game, Genshin Impact has a natural compatibility with various types of gameplay, which gives us confidence in the long-term operation. Well, here's the deal. We don't have exact statistics on how many people do the Spiral Abyss, especially to its full completion, and even less do it to 36 stars. It's my opinion, however, that I don't think the game should be designed with these people in mind. I've defended aspects of this game that people absolutely despise in the past, knowing that people are going to hate that kind of content. Whether it be saying that Resin is healthy for the game, or artifact RNG isn't nearly as bad as people make it out to be. I don't care if something I say I know is going to get backlash. I don't just want to say the popular opinion that everyone is constantly saying. I say whatever I believe, and I don't think this was a good answer for the developers to give. That's not me saying that this being a bad answer is a hot take. I don't think many people are going to look at this and be happy about this answer. Sure, there are going to be a lot of players who maybe wipe some sweat from their forehead going, whew, I don't have to worry about another Spiral Abyss that I'm going to miss out on rewards for because I'm not strong enough to do it. And that applies to a lot of players, whether it be because you're not actually spending your resin because you're kind of self-defeatist about it. You're like, oh, what's the point of spending resin? You get nothing for artifacts anyway. Well, obviously, if you're not even trying, you're not going to get good artifacts. And you don't have good artifacts, you're not going to clear the Abyss easily. That's if you manage to clear it at all. I think that it's an incredibly poor decision to cater the game towards these types of players. There are lots of players who've been playing since day one or close to it, such as myself, free-to-play and whales alike, who've been building their characters up. They have a lot of strong characters and they're wondering, when am I ever actually going to be able to utilize this stuff? And the answer appears to be, well, never, maybe. Our Magic 8 Ball right now is saying something like signs point to get fucked. Like, not implementing more endgame content because some players might feel left out on it. It's a goddamn gacha game. People already miss out on like half of the characters that we get because they can't afford to get them. And also, one of the big draws to these characters is having actual content to do with them. Even if a vast majority of players are on the more casual side, maybe they can't physically do the Abyss because their characters aren't strong enough and they don't enjoy character building enough to do it, or they are strong enough but they actually just hate the Abyss because I'm gonna be honest, the gameplay of the Abyss is not the most interesting, certainly not when you've been doing it for 2 years. The main joy I get out of the Abyss is because outside of some limited time events, it's the only point in the game where any mobs actually live for a decent amount of time, so it's really the only chance you get to actually use the characters properly. And while I don't require a more robust endgame or great difficulty to keep playing Genshin Impact, like, this news isn't going to make me quit. I still love the game and I still plan on playing it for a long time. However, that does not mean that I wasn't holding out hope for something else. Hell, one of the things I want the most is just an increased world level, even if it's just for AR60, something that is considerably harder, even for just a tiny little reward. I would just like the overworld mobs to be a little bit stronger. Sure, it might not be as efficient for elite farming or something, but at least it means I wouldn't have to go into the Spiral Abyss to test out new characters without something dying the moment you attack it a couple times. We even sometimes have combat events that actually feature some difficulty modes that surpass the Spiral Abyss in terms of HP totals and stuff, but usually they give us buffs to offset that and make us more powerful. These modes, however, are usually very unrewarding, usually just offering a few enhancement or, if you're lucky, and usually no primos, no Mora, no EXP books, nothing that would really draw people in. And that's fine, I guess. Some people just want the challenge for the sake of the challenge, and while I really love difficulty in games, ultimately I like being rewarded for difficulty, whether it be through achievements or just the simplest, just increased rewards. I'm still just shocked that they were willing to give us this answer because it seems like it would have been smarter just to come out and lie to us. We wouldn't know any better. Of course, there's always a hope that they're going to change their mind on this, because fortunately, from what I've been seeing, reception of this from casuals and hardcore alike have not been good. I mean, I really do hope they change their mind. As good as stuff like the Genius Invocation TCG is, Endgame will keep a vast majority of the hardcore player base playing, where something like that isn't going to draw in new people and probably isn't going to keep that many people longer than they would have initially stayed. But anyway, moving on to the next question. Genshin Impact is going into year 2 with an ever-expanding roster. Some older characters might get left behind as power creep settles in, and newer characters become much stronger choices. Is there a plan in place to potentially upgrade older characters and make them more viable? So I mean, TLDR, they asked, will you buff characters directly? To which Hoyoverse says, if a character is only assessed by a single dimension of numerical strength, power creep could indeed be an issue. However, in Genshin Impact, the rules of gameplay are more impactful than how strong a character is. Therefore, new battlegrounds, new challenge levels, and even new team builds all have potential to bring new life to existing content. They are mostly correct with this one. New content does make older characters stronger, like in the case of Noelle, she was pretty decent in the beginning of Genshin Impact. But as we got more Geo characters to battery her, and we also got things like the Husk set and the Redhorn Stone Thresher when Ito was released, Noelle became a much stronger character and much more viable to use. Albedo also benefited at the same time because he got the Husk set and he got his own unique weapon, the Cinnabar Spindle. Albedo had a couple teams before these things, but he was mostly only there because there wasn't really any better options and anyone else would have interfered with the game plan. Indirect buffs like this are fantastic and they're a really creative way to buff characters, but some can't exactly be targeted like this easily. A character like Amber comes to mind, where anything that buffs her charge attacks could also potentially buff a character like Ganyu unless you make it hyper specific, like affecting pyro charge attacks. Aside from that, we have actually seen some direct buffs. They're very limited, but we had a buff for Zhongli and basically the entire Geo element, and also transformative reactions in version 1.6. As for the issue of power creep, or rather the question of power creep, I don't really think it's been an issue. We have characters that came out very early on in the game's lifespan, like Ganyu or Hu Tao, that are still very strong characters today, arguably still at the top of the tier list. And we still have Venti. Venti was the very first limited character released, and he's still very strong. With that in mind, I don't think it's too crazy to say that power creep hasn't been a big issue despite getting a lot of new characters since release. I actually think there's an argument for the opposite case to be made, that characters are sometimes getting weaker or more niche, especially in the case of 4-stars that started out really strong, possibly way too strong, and are getting more balanced as time goes on. Their next question was in regards to the fact that with the introduction of Dendro, elements like Geo and Cryo, for example, were left out of the equation. So they wanted to know if Hoyoverse planned on adding those or changing that in the future. And I think the highlight of their response was them saying, for us, there are other ways to increase the fun for players rather than simply increasing the complexity of game rules. Which, yeah, I can agree with that. And actually, I think the fact that Cryo was left out from a Dendro reaction actually made some more interesting scenarios, where you can have both Cryo and Dendro active on a unit, and then both freeze and trigger a bloom. And that's honestly pretty cool. I would like some buffs for burning in the future, though. It kind of feels like we just didn't even get a new reaction there. It's kind of underwhelming. They then asked if there were plans to increase resin caps or resin refresh rate, to which Hoyoverse basically just said no, but in a very PR way of kind of just avoiding the question and telling you other ways in which you can earn rewards other than spending resin, like events. I wouldn't have expected any other answer, to be honest. It's been 2 years. What are the chances it's going to change now? They then asked about players being confused with the version 2.8 event, because people didn't have an introduction to Mona Official like we did way back in the day in version 1.1. Or was it 1.0? I honestly don't remember it, but it was in the very beginning of the game when we had that Meteor event. That's also when Scaramouche was introduced for the first time, which they also brought up, saying that newer players might not know who the hell these people are and basically have no proper introduction to them. But the developers did respond saying, we're aware of this issue and we are looking into solutions for it. On one hand, stories from limited time events shall never become barriers to understanding and playing Archon Quest. On the other hand, we're also working on beginner tutorial adjustments, client capacity optimization, intelligent management of past content, and other optimization. And as our technology and capacity grow, we hope to have useful solutions that players welcome. Which, that is an answer. I don't really know if it answers the question. I mean, at least says that it's on their radar in some way, but I don't really know what they could do other than either implement parts of the quest as just an actual quest unrelated to the event, or add some kind of cutscene gallery, which I've been asking for a long time. They could also even upload like a movie-like Let's Play version, like when other YouTubers upload movie versions of games where it's just all of the cutscenes and story beats just meshed together on their official YouTube channel, and that would be a step in the right direction. I'm all for exclusive content, but when it involves story-based things like that introduce characters, that doesn't quite feel right, especially if a new player doesn't even know it existed in the first place, so they wouldn't know to look for it. But anyway, and they had two last questions. The first one being, costumes were added to the game last year, providing new stylish looks for some characters. How likely is it that the Traveler becomes a recipient of one of these costumes? It would be interesting to see Traveler in clothing that represents some of the regions they enter in their journey. To which they said, it is an intriguing idea to design outfits and accessories with regional characteristics for the Traveler. We don't have anything to share on that front, but we're always considering new ideas. Kind of the answer I would expect from this. We of course all remember when we were offered a Ninazuma outfit and you could say yes, but then I was like, nah, you don't get one. A commemorative skin for the Traveler would be an excellent way to celebrate the anniversaries, especially when an anniversary is also celebrated at the same time a new region comes out. At least that was the case for both Inazuma and Sumeru. So having an outfit themed on the region for the anniversary, that'd be a really cool reward to get. They also had a follow-up question to this asking, Aether and Lumine seem to get fun little accessories during certain quests, like a mask or a flower crown, but they can only be worn for short periods of time. Have you ever considered turning these temporary accessories into permanent cosmetics? To which they say, we've been discussing this question within the team and some other ideas similar to it, however, we don't have any news or details to reveal at this time. Which I have nothing to say about that, so on to their last question. On top of Genshin Impact, Hoyoverse is also working on Honkai Impact 3rd, Zenless Zone Zero, and Honkai Star Rail. There's been a crossover between Genshin and Honkai in the past where Keqing and Fischl arrived in Honkai. Are there any plans in store to do the reverse and bring characters from Honkai into Genshin? And their reply to that was, in terms of characterization, we wish to channel more effort and attention into creating characters from the world of Genshin Impact. If there are new opportunities for crossover in the future, we will be sure to share them with everyone. Which personally, I'm thankful to hear that they'd rather just create new designs than give crossovers, because I'm personally not a huge fan of crossovers, even when they're of a franchise I like. So to me, this is good news, but I'm sure there are a lot of Honkai players who maybe wish their favorite character could make their way into Genshin, but it sounds like that might not be in the works. So that's it for this article and by extension this video. This wasn't something I intended to make, but when I read that one question, I felt compelled to say something because it's something I'm pretty passionate about. I love Endgame, I love challenging content, and while playing Genshin may spit in the face of that notion, it's still a game I enjoy a lot. Not every game I play has to have difficulty, but it is the thing I enjoy the most about game. So naturally, I wished for more Endgame and Genshin Impact, and it is rather disappointing to see that answer, but I'm not giving up hope completely. If you have thoughts on that, I would love to hear it in the comments below. I did read a Reddit thread about this where surprisingly people were having a similar reaction to me. Even casual players who claim to not like the Abyss still stated that they weren't happy with this answer either, and that's really good to hear. If the answer to that one particular question also disappointed you, as I imagine it did for a lot of players, the best thing you can do is just engage in discussion talking against it. With enough attention, they will see it and hopefully they will change their mind, or at least say that, okay, they've heard the concerns and they're gonna work on something. Even if it's only 30% of the player base, that is a sizable amount, and I think that every kind of player in an open world game like this should have something to look forward to. Story players will always have their story development. People who just want new hot characters will always have new gacha characters to pull for, because that's the business model. But anyway, this video is getting pretty long, so I'm going to end it here. So thank you for watching. Extra special thanks to my patrons, who they're just the best. Links to my socials down below if you would like to become one of them. Thank you for watching once again, and I will see you in the next one.
Attaboy!